to commence the events of the day, we now most respectfully invite Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Ravi Karunanayake, to deliver the opening statement.
Good morning to every one of you, and welcome to Sri Lanka, and everybody welcome for the first time. The Governor of the Central Bank, Mr. Kumarasamy, Mr. Gupta, the IMF representative in Sri Lanka, members of the Central Bank, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I must ensure due notice must be made to the contribution made by Japan, one of our dearest nations of Sri Lanka, for the benevolence in funding this important event, and the IMF Region Office Director for organizing the event in Sri Lanka. I extend a warm welcome to all foreign delegates assembled here who will witness not only a country of scenic splendor and natural beauty with a heritage and culture spanning over 2,500 years, but also to interact with the people of Sri Lanka who are famous for their hospitality. The topic of today's seminar of enhancing social spending in support of inclusive growth in Asia indeed is much relevant to a nation like Sri Lanka on the threshold of achieving middle income status. The noble objective of guiding the design of social spending policies to best support the twin objectives of growth and poverty reduction while ensuring fiscal sustainability should be lauded in no uncertain terms. I would like to dwell on the subject of fiscal sustainability, as we had situations in Sri Lanka in the past where certain projects had been undertaken without a clear direction to an acceptable feasibility study. Whatever the process of design, it is absolutely important to ensure financial sustainability. Over the years, Sri Lanka could be proud as a nation which provides at a public expense free healthcare, education and housing at subsidized costs. Such endeavors have resulted in the country being ranked in the 70s in the Human Development Index. Compared to all Asian neighbors, Sri Lanka achieved the high health indicator in health and related Millennium Development Goals. Overall, we had managed to reach the high standard with regard to the Millennium Development Goals. An unemployment index of 4.6% of poverty index of 6.7 needs further improvement, but our resilience was showcased to an extent that even through protracted civil strife, the indexes improved. Sri Lanka's literacy rate of over 90% and increasing life expectancy provides the correct answer with regard to the benefits that could be reaped by a focused approach to social spending on education and healthcare. Sri Lanka's focused approach to education provides not only school books but also uniform for all school children attending government schools. The emphasis of our government of good governance, which took over the reins of governing the country in January 2015, have provided the massively enhanced social spending whilst focusing the fiscal sustainability. The year 2015, the recurrent expenditure on healthcare increased by 25.7% over the previous year. The expenditure on education increased by 58 billion to rupees 222 billion from rupees 161 billion in 2014. As such, the relevant expenditure refers to the highest ever with relation to two of the most important social spending spheres. The prelude to 2016 budget highlighted 5 policies as platform way forward. This was something spelled by the Prime Minister. Generating of 1 million employment opportunities, enhancing income levels, development of rural economies, ensuring land ownership to rural and estates, the middle class and public sector employees. Create a wide and strong middle class provides impetus to create the inclusive growth through enhanced social spending. On the subject of social spending, the 2016 budget allocation on subsidies and transfers related to 21% of the total recurrent expenditure. Ill affordable, but this is what the Sri Lankan society is used to. So these have been the inheritance to us. The 2016 budgetary allocation for health care, education saw further increases with enhanced allocation from infrastructure development and schools and construction of new hospitals and ancillary buildings. Overall, it was people's budget with the emphasis on social spending to enhance the quality of life of all Sri Lankans. We look forward to the better ratings of Human Development Index in the future as we move on with added vigor to uplift the social standards of the people of Sri Lanka. Hopefully, this capacity building seminar could bring in innovative options, enhancing social spending in support of inclusive growth of Asia. I'm sure we Sri Lankans will be benefited through the deliberation and look forward to receiving copies of content of this seminar for my personal perusal on and necessary action. At this moment, I would also like to, while inviting all the people who have come for the first time, I look forward to getting engaged in a very proactive discussion and deliberation, because we believe Sri Lanka is a role model that can be looked at. We took the reins of running the government on 2015 January, and since then to today, you could see that there is an element of financial discipline that has been worked into the system. And you could see a sense of professionalism being brought in, which was non-existent for a decade and more. And I would like to see that the problem that we have inherited as a brought forward rather than a carry forward. The problem that we have is what we inherited in January is something which we are going to grapple and go forward. If we, as a new government, can write off all the misdeeds of the past government, it will make life for finance ministers that much easier. But practically, we are unable. I'm sure the country representative IMF knows it best, because the IMF is something which we went in for a discussion with abundance of prudence owing to the economic turbulences that took place in the world. But I guess realistic and practical approaches should be looked at rather than theoretical exercises that are thrusted onto countries. You could see that we have managed to increase revenues across the board almost 25 to 30%, and also reduce unwanted extravaganzas that are there for almost about 25%, helping to increase the fiscal space that is there. And I'm sure you professionals will be able to tell us how better we can take this little nation to a better tomorrow. So I'm sure now that the situation is opened up, I look forward to seeing you at a given date again if possible. But I'm sure if there's anybody who wants to further discuss with us, I'm sure you can get through the governor or through any of our central bank representatives, and we'll be delighted as a human government to be discussing with you to take Sri Lanka to a better tomorrow. Thank you very much and wish you all the very best.
Thank you, sir. We now most respectfully invite the Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, to deliver his opening remarks.
Honorable Finance Minister, Dr. Gupta, colleagues from the Central Bank, and friends from abroad. It's a great pleasure to be here with you this morning. I want to extend a particularly warm welcome to those of you who've come from abroad. Thanks are also due to my colleagues in the training school at the Central Bank, as well as the IMF staff, for putting together an excellent program. Of course, nothing would have been possible without the sponsorship of the government of Japan. Now, the theme of this conference is both extremely important and timely. Now, of course, everybody who speaks at an opening session of a conference or a seminar says this. So let me try to see whether I can justify why I say this is very timely and important. Now, a few years ago, the ADB's flagship publication, the Asian Outlook, I think they call it, identified rising inequality as the biggest threat to the 21st century, becoming the Asian century. So clearly, tackling inequality is of paramount importance to Asia if it is to realize its potential. And that, as it turns out, applies to the whole world. Really, inequality is now a global problem. Now, over the last 3 decades, Asia has had a remarkable record in terms of pulling millions of people out of poverty, particularly in East and Southeast Asia. Now, the challenge is to maintain this momentum in the face of some major headwinds. I will just pick a couple of them. There are a number of headwinds. But one is that we are now in a deflationary world where slow growth and sluggish international trade is the new norm. This, of course, makes export expansion, which was at the heart of the Asian miracle, more challenging, particularly as the 2 largest economies in the world, are likely to experience much slower growth going forward. A second headwind drawing from your program over the next couple of days for several countries in Asia is the challenge of aging. There are twin challenges, or at least challenges at two levels one could identify with this phenomenon of an aging population. Now, with a declining workforce, growth will have to be driven to a far greater extent by efficiency improvements. One can no longer get growth by adding more and more people to the labor force. And in such a context, increasing total factor productivity becomes more important. And that is clearly more difficult than driving growth through an increasing workforce. The second problem that is associated with aging is, of course, the need to accommodate the increasing costs associated with providing services for an aging population. And this ranges from health and care services to comprehensive but sustainable pension schemes. And as far as pensions are concerned, I think it becomes even more important because as modernization takes place, the considerable social capital that is associated with traditional society gets eroded. In the past, people were born, they lived and died in the same place or in pretty much the same place. Now we have far greater mobility, and that does erode the social capital that's available within families, within communities, to take care of the aged. So that places an even higher premium on designing affordable pension schemes. Now, a major part of economics is addressing the trade-offs in the context of scarce resources. Those of you who work in the area of fiscal policy face this challenge on a day-to-day basis. That's what your whole life is about, is looking at these trade-offs, looking at competing claims on scarce resources. How does one prioritize? How does one get the best outcomes? That's what fiscal policy formulation is all about. Now, and a key challenge in terms of trade-offs is to balance social spendings to promote inclusiveness and provide social protection with the need to maintain incentives to invest, to create wealth and generate productive employment. How does one strike that balance? That's a day-to-day challenge that policymakers in the fiscal policy area face. And given the constrained fiscal space which most countries face in today's world, priority has to be attached to effectiveness of social spending. This places a high premium on good design and a relentless focus on outcomes. A relentless focus on outcomes is crucial. Now, the conference program will enable you to address some of these issues. You will have the opportunity to draw on the knowledge of some world-renowned experts, and of course, from the experience each of you have had in your own countries in terms of the diversity of reform experiences in the Asian region. The finance minister spoke very eloquently about Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka's record. I will keep my remarks short. I don't want to repeat his very comprehensive description of the Sri Lankan situation. But as he pointed out, Sri Lanka has a deservedly vaunted record on social development. If you look at the performance on the MDGs, if you look at Sri Lanka's ranking on the UNDP Human Development Index, Sri Lanka is clearly an outperformer. These are impressive credentials that we are justly proud about. Now, there are two messages, though, I'd like to leave with you. This investment in social development has made this economy extremely resilient. Even during the conflict period, which spanned close to 3 decades, the economy grew at 5%. In my view, a major part of that resilience comes from the investment we made in our people. That gives us a foundation. This economy would find it very difficult to grow much less than 4.55%. Our challenge is to get it to 8% and 10%. But it has that foundation because of our investment in the social sector. So that's the upside, the good message. The second message, I think it's an important message for us and probably for those of you from outside, that despite our tremendously impressive credentials in terms of social sector development, we have had youth insurrections in the south and a conflict, a separatist conflict in the north. Now, these kinds of episodes have complex causality, multifaceted causality. But in my view, the main causal factor was a mismatch between expectations and opportunities as far as our young people are concerned. So what is the lesson to draw from that? The lesson is that you have to balance social development and wealth creation. That balance is what you are constantly trying to seek. And I think you can draw lessons from Sri Lanka on this. And as the minister has told you, the government is trying to strike that balance. It is increasing its outlays on education and health and social sector development. At the same time, there's a big thrust in terms of improving the investment climate, the investment policies, the doing business index stuff, the investment promotion, trade policy, trade facilitation, all those things, everything that goes into a more investor-friendly environment is being driven forward. And at the same time, there is a recognition that there is a role for both domestic investment as well as foreign investment on this journey. So the balance is that government is pressing on, pushing ahead with increased outlays on social expenditure. At the same time, it will work with others, in partnership with others, on its major development programs, which will build infrastructure and assets around the country. There are major area development programs which are in the pipeline. And the challenge for the finance minister, and so far that's what we are focusing on, the IMF is helping us to do that, is to do all this within a sustainable fiscal framework. The beginning so far has been good. The next and final point I want to make is really to address this debate between growth and inclusivity. For me, this is a false dichotomy because it's important to point out that inclusive social spending is in fact pro-growth. Well-designed social spending on education and health are important for strengthening the growth framework of an economy. The growth potential of an economy can be increased by investment in human capital. Equally, higher growth gives you more government revenue to spend on social spending. For instance, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee scheme in India, or the Bolsa Familia scheme in Brazil would not have been possible without higher growth in those countries. And the higher growth generated. Of course, Brazil is now having its difficulties, but those programs, which were major social protection programs, would not have been possible if those economies hadn't experienced higher growth. So let me finish by saying that I hope that at the end of these 2 days, you will have gained new insights into developing social spending policies which make growth and inclusivity mutually reinforcing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ken Kashiwase, Senior Economist, IMF Regional Office for Asia and Pacific, would now deliver the opening remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm Ken Kashiwase, Senior Economist from the IMF Asia and Pacific Department, currently working at the regional office in Tokyo. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to this important seminar. Let me start by showing my profound gratitude to the Honorable Finance Minister, Ravi Karunanayak, the Governor, Indrajit Kumaraswamy, and the senior management team of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka to attend this inauguration ceremony. It is our great honor to have you here this morning. I would like to show my deep gratitude to our co-organizer, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and the Government of Japan, which generously provided financing to make this event possible. I would also like to thank our IMF colleagues from the Fiscal Affairs Department who agreed to share their expertise at this event, and the IMF resident in Sri Lanka for her continued support. I'm also very grateful to all the participants for making time in their busy schedule to attend this important event. I'm sure that this seminar will be a wonderful opportunity to exchange views and compare country experiences on social spending issues in support of inclusive growth in Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, now it is my great privilege to introduce Deputy Director Sanjeev Gupta from the IMF Fiscal Affairs Department. Mr. Gupta is one of the most distinguished economists in the IMF and has held a number of important positions. Mr. Gupta has led IMF missions to some 25 countries in Africa, Asia, Europe, and Middle East, and represented the IMF in numerous international meetings and conferences. Mr. Gupta has authored and co-authored over 150 papers on macroeconomic and fiscal issues covering advanced, emerging, and low-income countries, and co-authored and co-edited 10 books, some of which he will use during this seminar for his presentations. Now, please join me to welcome the Deputy Director Sanjeev Gupta to the floor.
Thank you, Ken, for a very generous introduction, and good morning to you all. And let me join Honorable Minister and the Governor in welcoming you all to this conference. I'm not going to elaborate much on what the focus of the conference will be, because that was done very nicely by both the Minister and the Governor. But from our perspective, why did we do it? Why do we see this focus? And this really comes from the recognition that good social policies are essential for successful implementation of sound macroeconomic policies for sustainable growth. So over time, we've learned that from experience. And then we also know that the budget is a key vehicle for achieving society's distributive goals. And therefore, the focus of this conference is on the role that the fiscal policy plays in this regard. So, in the next 2 days, what we will do is really focus on the issues that Honorable Minister and the Governor laid out, and in the way they laid out, because I think the issues were very clearly set forth. How to ensure equity while not affecting growth, how to deal with the efficiency, how to deal with incentives, all those issues, drawing on the international experience. And we do have some very well-known experts who will then bring some material on the table. So on the first day, what we will do is we'll focus on the broad range of social spending programs that help to promote inclusive growth. These include both unconditional and conditional cash transfers, as well as in-kind outlays on education and health that the Honorable Minister was referring to earlier. A key message will be that the potential for social spending and fiscal policy more generally to promote inclusive growth depends principally on how it is designed. I mean, for us, one of the key emphasis is going to be on the design of the fiscal policy. This is also true in the context of fiscal consolidation. That is, when a country is embarking on an adjustment program, and then it has to ensure that the spending is very much in line with the available resources. And the design of the fiscal consolidation is also important, because then it avoids the adverse impacts on poverty and inequality. So on the second day, the conference will turn to the challenges facing in designing and implementing social programs that I had started to mention at the beginning. both now and in the future. Effective social spending requires that sufficient attention be paid to the implementation capacity, because implementation capacity can vary from country to country, and so one has to tailor the programs in relation to the capacity of countries to implement them. Something that we don't, or we haven't paid much attention, but we are starting to think more and more about it, is the rigorous evaluation of social spending to ensure that the right programs with the right design are in place. And I think this is something which clearly many academia are doing it, and we also want to move in that direction. Embedding a culture of evaluation within the government is therefore crucial. But then this is not something which is easy to achieve, and we recognize that part. So over coming decades, many countries will face the challenge of aging population, the one which the governor referred to. We've been focusing on it quite a bit. It's a bigger issue in advanced economies, and it's going to be an issue for many of the large emerging economies. China is facing that in a big way, and so we have done some work more recently, going forward, looking into next 50, 60 years as to what the changes are and how the countries need to prepare for those changes. So what that means is that the countries will need to be more efficient in spending the limited resources that they have, and ensure that there is fiscal sustainability in that spending. And many countries are already grappling with these challenges, and we hope that learning from both successful and unsuccessful experiences will help others along this path. So all the sessions will have ample time for discussion. At least that's how the seminar has been designed, to allow people to share experiences, and we encourage the participants to engage fully to maximize the value of the event. This also applies to coffee, lunch and dinner, which provides time for participants to have informal sharing of views. So before I conclude, I would just like to make one point. The organizers are very keen that we stress to the speakers that they stay within the time limit which has been given to them of 20 to 25 minutes, so as to allow for discussion. And the session chairpersons have been instructed to ensure that this limit is implemented rigorously. So with this, I wish you a productive and enjoyable 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. With that, we have now come to the end of the inauguration ceremony. Have a productive day. Thank you all.